So dear colleagues and friends who joined to this event from all over the world, it's a pleasure to be part of this workshop organized by University degli Studi di Milano and Ankara Üniversitesi. I would like to thank the organizers, Luca Peroner, Inez Waka, and Fikri Kulakoğlu for their kind invitation. I will contribute to this seminar by presenting the results of the ongoing archaeological research in the Amuk Valley of Hatay on the southeastern border of Turkey. This is, I would call as an impact zone / borderland for the Eastern Mediterranean, Near Eastern, and Anatolian counterparts. Today, my talk will exclusively be focused on the second millennium BC through several interconnected projects, providing a view from the politically, socially, and economically entangled center and relatively unknown periphery. I will also touch upon the often bypassed, unexplored ritual landscape of the Kingdom of Mukesh. The Amuk Valley of Hatay The Amuk Valley of Hatay has not only been a region of rich agricultural potential, but as I stressed, a buffer and an impact zone where traces of cultural, economic, and political interactions between distinct and distant cultures of Anatolia and the Near East, as well as Levantine, Egyptian, and Aegean counterparts can be traced from stages of chiefdoms to city-states and then to kingdoms and empires. The valley's geographic benefits bolstered its attractiveness from Neolithic onwards, and with much respect to Robert Braidwood's pioneering surveying and excavation techniques, the archaeology of the Amuk Valley contributed to major research topics from macro-regional economies to cross-regional early interaction dynamics and mobility patterns. The Amuk Valley revealed a unique archaeological dataset for researchers interested in the larger understanding and synchronization of cultural encounters over long durations. This statement was further implemented in 1930s and 40s excavations conducted at the Bronze Age capital located roughly 20 kilometers east of modern Antakya. With an agenda to define the early interactions between Western and Eastern civilizations, Telechana was targeted by the British archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley, where he successfully revealed the second millennium sequence, providing archaeological and textual anchorages to Kingdom of Mukesh and its capital city, Alala. This statement...
Sorry, Murat, could you use full screen? Because actually we see the slide quite small.
Hold on. How about this?
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
thank you.
So I was the wrong. All right, sorry.
Thank you.
Anyway, at Tel Tainat, the University of Chicago Syro-Hittite expedition explored the lesser-known 3rd millennium BC dynamics and revealed a stratigraphic sequence with Neo-Hittite and Neo-Assyrian levels, providing references to the ancient city of Kunulua, the capital city of the recently defined Kingdom of Valasatin and then Unkipatina in the Iron Age. Following a century break, the region was retargeted for extensive research under the direction of Kutlu Aslıhan Yener, when the second round of archaeological surveys were targeted on understanding the shifting settlement patterns in relation to the turmoil political history of the Near East and Anatolia, via interconnected research strategies targeting the exploration of environmental and anthropogenic factors over the changing landscape and the shifting settled human activity. The NIEV survey program not only numerically increased the sites found over to 400, but an ongoing effort had revealed the spatially and temporally defined site distribution patterns. As part of the Amuk Valley regional projects, Tony Wilkinson's geoarchaeological research program, with much respect to, set the foundations of the sediment coring strategies developed especially in and around the old Amuk Lake and in the vicinities of the capitals of Tel Achana and Tel Tainat. The first round of geoarchaeological research program resulted with the understanding of the gradual expansion of the Amuk Lake from Chalcolithic to Iron Age, providing the first data set to define the relationship between changing climate, landscape, and responses given by the inhabitants of the Amuk Valley through under diverse political entities. Archaeological and textual data from the Amuk Valley and the neighboring regions show signs of reurbanization in the beginning of Middle Bronze Age. As a super-regional phenomenon extending along the borders of the Orontes, Euphrates, and Tigris river systems and Halis Basin, Middle Bronze Age is marked by monumental scale construction programs reflecting the complexity achieved in the use of space and the symbolic representation of the prestige and power of autonomous cities and kingdoms. This was best observed at Alala through 1930s excavations, yielding a continuous Middle Bronze Age occupation with a peak reached at level 7, reflected itself in the formation of spaces of administration, power, and prestige. In 1956, Sidney Smith stated that Alala has provided the unique opportunity to visualize historical events in stratigraphically defined archaeological contexts. This correct observation unfortunately failed in practice due to Woolley's overambitious historical attributions, overstepping or sometimes eliminating the physical reality of the archaeological data. Nevertheless, Alala, the capital city of the later late Bronze Age kingdom of Mukish, the much later capital city of Kınılığa, providing textual references to the bounded relationship between two tals. Unfortunately, the triggering reasons behind the shift from Tel Tainat to Tel Echana in the early Bronze, Middle Bronze Age transition is still a question yet remains to be understood. In our perception of the landscape of capitals, we stress that these two sites should be seen as part of a megacity with different loci occupied in different times. I will touch upon this issue from proxy sites as well as geoarchaeological perspectives at the end of my presentation. The Middle Bronze Age at Tel Echana have been under investigation in the last years with squares located in strategic points in the royal precinct, cross-cutting Woolley's excavation area, as well as on the northeastern slope of the Tal and southwestern elevated portion of the site. Today, I will limit myself mostly to the results obtained from the northern sectors of the site and will specifically exclude Area 4 Middle Bronze Age remains. The results acquired from Area 4 is currently under depth study by Mike Johnson from University of Chicago and Marina Pucci from University degli Studi di Firenze. Their work will hopefully shed more light on this particular time period from outside of the royal citadel. On the royal precinct, while a large body of data was obtained from Woolley's excavations concerning the late Middle Bronze Age levels, particularly with the exposure of the level 7 palace, its construction and destruction dates and its relation to earlier levels were less documented, thus creating a floating palace within the major site sequence. New excavations have already confirmed our understanding of the pre-level 7 palace now. A severely burned kitchen context with its substantial mud brick walls and a complete in situ assemblage was exposed in our sounding operation conducted in the main courtyard of level 7 palace. Following the same structural organization with the level 7 palace, this earlier complex was in high probability located along the line of the fortification system, where a series of rooms with serving and storage functions were utilized for food-related activities. In the southern room, the large-sized storage jars containing amber wheat, a cooking place with a horseshoe-shaped part, and a working bench characterize the context as a kitchen, probably used in service for many personnel resided or worked within the perimeters of the palace. Quantity of serving bowls and vessels were found also in the adjacent room context. In order to better visualize the relationship between the level 7 palace and the earlier palatial structure, the slide on the screen shows the archaeological deposition between these two buildings. In relation to this deposition, the radiocarbon dates acquired from the short-lived samples provided rather earlier dates. This dating, though, is still provisional and needs further comparative data from other squares nearby. The continuation of the very same building has now been explored over the last 2 seasons in the southern wing of the level 7 palace. where the results testify our interpretation that the structure was indeed, in fact, a palace, and in fact, much more substantial than the level 7 palace itself. The same burning event is also traced in this building, but the floor levels between these two units is almost 2 meters. This is not surprising since level 7 palace follows the same terrace construction principles where the floors between southern and northern wing rise up to 2 meters, thus providing that much of the Middle Bronze Age topography of the site was formed prior to level 7. Pre-level 7 ceramic data acquired from Woolly's palace and temple soundings and from our excavations imply a strong continuity in the choice of shapes and minimal foreign impact in the development of artistic choices in pottery production, at least for this time period. While the bulk assemblage is dominated by simple plainware, the distinct serious solutionware appears to be a common form widely diffused at Alala, as well as in northwest Syria and Cilicia, as the results of early interregional encounters. Sporadic appearances of serious solutionware in central Anatolian contexts at Kültepe and Aceremelik signify these early encounters. The presence of a fragment of a middle Minoan 2 camera sphere below the sealed cement floors of the level 7 proves with no doubt that the connections with the West were already established prior to level 7 and complicates further the understanding of the chronology and synchronization methods. Also, the recently discovered fresco fragments in the construction hill of the level 7 palace in its southern wing now direct our attention to understand the origins of wall painting practices in the Near East and Anatolia. The appearance of wall paintings at Alala, Katna, Mari, Tel Kabri, Tel Sakka, Tel Burak, Tel El Daba are generally accepted to be product of a Mediterranean koine and look through a very fixed agiocentric perspective. This certainly owes much of its reasons at Alala to Niemeier's and Niemeier's reconstruction, which is now in display in Ashmolean Museum. The constructions are purely inspired from Aegean examples, specifically from the seated griffin of Knossos and the bull with the double head axis. A new reconstruction based on old Woolly excavation photographs showing the fragments in situ are suggesting a different view. This is not going to be detailed here in this talk, but I really encourage all the audience to go through this fascinating new article published by Aslan Yener on this particular topic. The Middle Bronze Age operations also revealed evidences on the use of space in terms of cult and ritual. Our ambitious sounding operation located in the courtyard of the Late Bronze Age palace had revealed 5 distinct architectural phases. The earliest local phase 5 building with multiple floor levels reaching 6 meters below the ground level of courtyard of level 4 palace shows unusual architectural practices attested in the royal precinct during the Middle Bronze Age. The building had curvilinear extension in its southern wing in its earlier and following subphases. The curvilinear wall tradition in a building of monumental size ascribes a special feature. Such buildings, unlike Western Anatolia, are not frequently encountered during the Middle Bronze Age in the Near East. And we suggested that this building might have served as a sanctuary or a sacred space, especially with its close proximity to the temple area formerly excavated by Woolly. A similar structure excavated at Tel Bia Tuttul in northern Syria was defined likely as a temple. Unfortunately, since the building is completely absent from in-situ finds, it's hard to tell its intended origin. But since there were several deities worshipped at Alala, I don't think it's surprising to find several more temples dedicated to various deities at Terrachana. Going to the northwest slope of the town, the Alala cemetery, discovered on the outer side of the fortification wall, has generated over 100 inhumation burials from Middle Bronze to Late Bronze 1 contexts, creating a perfect data set for understanding population dynamics through material culture and genomic research. The outstanding results of genomic research is now available, revealing evidence regarding genetic shifts observed throughout the early Bronze, Middle Bronze Age transition in the region. Also, a new publication by leading authors Tara Ingman and Stephanie Eisenman will soon be available, exploring both interregional and regional mobility patterns through isotopic research. In terms of more traditional way of archaeology and, let's say, city planning, the late Middle Bronze II fortification wall with an external buttress was exposed with the removal of Late Bronze I modification phases. We observed that the craft quarters were located along the line of fortification system, whereas the exterior eastern slope of the tell was used as a cemetery of the settlement. In a small space of 10 by 5 meters and in roughly 2 meters of accumulation on the slope, we excavated more than hundreds of inhumation burials, as I said, and adding the disarticulated human remains, the minimum individual numbers reaches up to 300. This burial density creates a challenging puzzle, since often one burial cuts another. Secondary burial practices were also seen to be attested, like in a horror scene, either intentionally or accidentally, due to high number of burials disturbing each other. It is particularly interesting to see that typical Middle Bronze Age pottery types were used as burial gifts also during the Late Bronze I, signifying conservative aspects in burial practices with their usage over a longer period of time. The Middle Bronze Age Allalah witnessed to technological advancements and highly skilled craft production under palace control. Ivory production, best observed by the elephant tusks found in the storage rooms of the level 7 palace, Egyptianized ivory figurines, or hundreds of inlays and appliques. Or the stone craftsmanship revealing itself in the variety of locally produced foreign influence vessels. And sculptures all point to the considerable extent of the production capacity reached at the site. The Allalah assemblages in general thus dictates already well-established contacts with Eastern Mediterranean, Near Eastern, and Anatolian partners. But what made Allalah rich and prosperous apart from agriculture? According to Level 7 archives, with its organization of viti and viniculture hinterland, olive oil and wine were imported commodities that Allalah maintained and benefited from. But since many times the region is only explored through its major sites, such as Telechana or Tel Tainat for the case of Amuk, the socio-economic dynamics between central and peripheral sites are mainly explored through regional survey data, which is crucial in order to understand site density and distribution patterns, but misleading due to its wide temporal frame, lacking contextual data set. Thus being said, now I would like to take you to Toprakhisar, a small-scale site located in the narrow river valley of Beyaz Çay. This is a tributary of the Orontes River that born from the mountains of Yaylada and runs through the Altınözü district of Hatay. Beyaz Çay River Valley is flanked by low hills on its east and west, creating a narrow passageway to the Amuk Valley. Today, the hills around Toprakhisar are covered with naturally grown and cultivated olive trees, and the business of olive oil constitutes the main sources of income for the region. Located roughly 140 meters above sea level, Toprakhisar gently connects with the Piedmont of the hills covered with olive trees and can be defined as a hillside mound-type settlement. The undisturbed section of the mount extends roughly across an area of 2 hectares, but the exact expansion of the site is unclear due to significant human impact in the region. Heavily damaged by Toprakhisar village located on top, it is also under the threat from the Yarseli Dam that was constructed in 1930s, which became the primary motivator for initiation of rescue excavations. This small-scale site has now begun to reveal what we are missing from the Amuk Valley, the complete chronological sequence. The preliminary extensive surveys revealed material evidence that the site was continuously occupied from 6th millennium to 1st millennium BC with an occupational break throughout the Late Bronze Age. This is really in contrast to Amuk Valley settlements, and it's a key feature, as we can tell. The excavations initiated in the Bulldoze High Terrace in 2016, I would say just to our luck, revealed the extremely well-preserved remains of a Middle Bronze Age building complex under the remains of a perished modern barn. Named as Building 2, it was constructed of mud bricks with no stone foundations. The walls were relatively easy to raise during the excavations, since they were often made from distinct composition of silt and sand matrix, while plastering was applied on both sides. The floors gently rise along the corridor-type arranged rooms towards east, dictating that the building was laid on a terrace. Both courtyards were heavily burned. The carbonized wooden planks exposed along the wall faces suggested that the courtyards were partially roofed to create shaded working spaces, which also prevented damage from unfavorable weather conditions. Identical assemblages, including storage jars, cooking pots, grinding stones, were found nearby horseshoe-shaped hearths. This indicates that both courtyards were organized according to the stages of food production. Ceramics retrieved from Building 2 also shared same characteristics with the Middle Bronze Age ceramic assemblages from Telechana. Although low in numbers and fragmentary in condition, painted silver solution ware bowls and other close-shaped vessels were found, as well as also gray burnished ware bowls were found, indicating perhaps that a light usage was present at Toprakhisar in relation to gray burnished ware. The dendrochronological research provides earlier dates with consistent C14 readings from the 4 samples analyzed taken from different locations of the building. The sample presented here in screen was selected from a short-lived roundwood, non-structural timber to avoid any old wood issue, pointing to the end of 21st century BC and to the beginning of 20th century BC. This is taking us to a time period that we don't know from Tel Tainat and Telechana. Of the 6 horseshoe-shaped hearths, 4 were found as pairs, and the most distinctive aspect of Toprakhisar hearths is the application of decoration in frontal faces. The decoration on the wet smoothed surface is relatively simple and varies from 2 to 3 vertical grooves applied by fingers. Decorated horseshoe-shaped hearths are not known from Middle or Late Bronze Age contexts at Telechana. This decoration, on the contrary, seems to be well appreciated at Middle Bronze Age Toprakhisar. The decoration applied on the horseshoe-shaped hearths unequivocally defines the extent of the interaction between the artifact and its user. In this respect, individuals involved in the act of making hearths or cooking at a peripheral site seem to have developed strong bonds with the living space and the utilitarian objects that they produce. Also found in ritual pits prior to the construction of Building 2, the objects used in this ritual are contexts of our peculiar character, further contributing to the understanding of their temporal and spatial distribution in Near Eastern contexts. Generally defined as stone spirits, following Carter's 1970 article, the crudeness of the style attested in this statue is identical to that of the stylized male and female stone reliefs found in late Bronze I context at Telechana. These were also carved in a worshipping posture and were associated with Kuru-Mitannian levels at the site. Toprakhisar example provides an early Middle Bronze Age context, from an early Middle Bronze Age context, indicate that the practice of placing crudely carved figurines as votive offerings or as protective spiritual gardens evolved long before the Mitannian era in the region. In accordance with the distribution patterns of the available data sets, this may perhaps signal a nomadic, pastoralist, Hurrian or Amorite in parentheses identity in its origin that is not local to Amuk Valley prior to the end of early Bronze Age. The ground plan of Building 2 excavated at Toprakhisar also strikingly shares the same construction principles with the structures, or let's say much larger palaces, such as Western Palace of Ebla, Level 7 Palace of Alala, or Kineteug on the other side of Amonos Mountains, particularly with their sections dedicated to storage and large cooking. Unfortunately, since the site is heavily damaged, we have left no space except east to trace the extension of the building where likely residential spaces were located. The current evidence acquired from the site, on the contrary, showed that although smaller in size, the site was granted certain privileges by perhaps being involved in the business of olive oil, which provided a unique character. Rice suggested the relationship between the globally traced 4.2K BP climatic event and the archaeologically not well-traced population movements that likely occurred at the end of 3rd millennium BC. The 4.2K BP event created arid environmental conditions, especially in northern Mesopotamia, and it's suggested to be a catalyst behind nomadization of diverse groups, such as, again in parentheses, Amorites and Hurrians, and their movement to more favorable and climatically less stressed regions. Orontes is suggested to be one of them. This environmental issue in prompting long-distance cultural interactions may reasonably be seen as one of the triggers behind the appearance of stone spirit genre at Toprak Sarayuk in the early Middle Bronze Age, or as well as in decorated horseshoe-shaped hearts identical to Tigris and Euphrates sites. Since ritual paraphernalia are ways of cooking are regarded as distinct markers for defining culturally and traditionally distinguished group. But much of our understanding of the ritual practices in the Near East is coming from tell sites. Yet the relationship between human and their surrounding landscape extends beyond the perimeters of the living spaces. Thus being said, as part of our Highland Survey project, I would like to take you to the unexplored hidden landscape of the Kırıkhan region, which has now begun to shed light further on the ritual landscape of the Amuk Valley. Kızılkaya limestone massif is located along the narrow passageway that connects the Amuk to Islahiye plain on the north and to Afrin Valley on the east, and it's one of the rocky limestone hilltops located in the region. Over hundreds of dolmens were found extended over this 5-kilometer rock outcrop. Whether used as cenotaphs, gateways to celestial world, or actual burial grounds, the remnants of the cultic activity defines its symbolic value from at least, let's say, late Chalcolithic onwards. Previously surveyed and defined as a megalithic structure, a building of rectangular shape stood on the southern summit of Kızılkaya, visible from a long range in a day with less humidity. A high-resolution drone mapping survey conducted this summer revealed how the structure was incorporated into terrain resembling the high-top quarters, perhaps like at Büyükkale in Hattusha, but at, of course, much reduced scale. Also clearly visible in the autophorus created, the central and eastern section of the building were highly disturbed by illegal excavations. Deeper pits were cut along the wall corners, providing an idea how the inner arrangement of the building was laid out. The presence of solely early 2nd millennium BC pottery in the Luther's pit and around dictate that perhaps we are looking at one of the hilltop earliest, in parentheses and question mark, storm god temple that parallels we know from much later Hittite centers, especially in central Anatolia. Here the wind blows strong, the sun sets in a theatrical fashion, and the Kızılkaya massif dominate the landscape, creating an ideal location for creating bonds with the celestial world. Moving from Middle Bronze Age open-air temples, cult and ritual, and back to capital city Alalakh, the Late Bronze Age in the Amuk witnesses the ambitious empire-building efforts of Mitanni and Hittites. This is best observed at Alalakh in the sequence following the destruction of the level 7 palace, which is historically associated with Hattusili I. This certainly had a dramatic impact in the royal precinct, best observed in square 3257, where above the apsidal building, the subsequent faces revealed no administrative or cultic structures, but small-scale production units related and a large street context. This chaotic environment is reflected with a number of what we can call crime scenes. An adult facing down was found in the corner of a building, while a woman of 40-45 years old was found dumped in the bottom of a well/silo. The regeneration and re-establishment of the central authority is evident in the succeeding phases where administrative and large-scale structures reappear. Phase 2 also contains cylinder seals and sealing practices that define the early Mitannian influence in the region. Level 4, as a turning point, defines a new era in Alalak's occupational history. The construction of the palace, with its colonnaded and stepped entrance, is defined as one of the earliest examples of Bitilani-type architecture, which later becomes the characteristic of Iron Age temples. The construction of Level 4 palace is now attributed to King of Idrimi of Alalak, who says in his autobiographic inscription that he became subservient to Mitannian King Paratarna and built a new palace at Alalak. This is the same time period for the introduction of the Mitannian elite pottery practices defined as Nuziware, to its first discovery, of course, at Nuzi Yorgantepe, which was adopted and transformed into locally produced Achanaware towards the end of 14th century BC, with motifs including flower designs. The archaeological level following the destruction of the Level 4 palace, possibly by Hittites, under Tutalia ? And its implications in the wider socio-political landscape were presented erroneously in Woolley's final publication. It is expressed that a massive Hittite fortress was constructed of mud bricks and located over the ruins of Level 4 palace. However, our excavations show that following the destruction of the palace and the adjacent castle complex, the castle was successively rebuilt 3 times prior to the erection of the so-called Great Hittite Fortress. This is all published in detail in the recently available monograph. These rebuildings were designated as Period 2 to distinguish it from Woolley's idea of Level 3, which was defined by the erection of Hittite fortress in the royal precinct. Period 2 for us consists of 2 meters of archaeological deposition separated by distinct floor levels never published before by Woolley. The 2003-10 excavations revealing the western extension of the fortress does indeed confirm its attribution to the Hittite king Shupilima I, but it redefined it as a single-phase mud-brick foundation platform that was constructed for a larger superstructure over the ruins of the Level 4 castle modification phases, a fortress which also have now been confirmed to be left unfinished in antiquity, though due absence of floor levels. The contemporary Area 4 exposures in the southwestern elevated section of the Tal in 6 trenches revealed another fortress-type structure sharing the same construction principles as the northern fortress, with the use of casemate and mud brick foundations. The northern and southern fortress defined the abrupt changes observed in the city with the application of a new Hittite defense strategy. The close relationship between the Hittite landscape and its symbolic and functional perception formed the cultural landscape of Anatolia in the Middle and Late Bronze Ages. Mukish in the late 14th century BC was a hostile territory, and the Hittite management must have required a process of adaptation, which in case of Alalak was issued by political and military suppression exchange as evident by textual references. Coming close to the end of my talk, let us say that symbolism encoded in the use of space at Alalak in the form of fortresses as the 3-dimensional embodiment of a new ruling authority not only expressed the Hittite socio-economic and military policies toward North Syria, but brought forward the question of how to define and analyze the complex patterns of interactions and local responses that led to the formation and adaptation and hybridization in the material culture, such as in the scene in this slide, the Hittite pointed jugglet, which transformed into a kind of new style at Alalak. Our current understanding about Alalak dictates that the site lost its power at the beginning of the 14th century, 13th century BC, although the temples continued to exist. Perhaps the administrative management was again shifted to Tal Tayinat in that time. The settlement shift, as well as the social dynamics of climate change, has now been under investigation as part of the recently awarded Turkish National Science Foundation grant. And our new sedimentary coring program included data collection strategies from all of the sites discussed in this talk, including Toprakhisar, between Teleçana and Tel Taynat, and the drained Amuk Lake, which has begun to reveal crucial information regarding the paleoclimate and paleoenvironment, especially in the transition from Bronze Age to Iron Age. This project included the extremely difficult task of acquiring undisturbed sedimentary cores that we successfully extracted. Cores varied from 10 to 21 meters in 20 different locations this summer. The extracted cores were cut, documented, and now transferred to Middle East Technical University Geological Engineering Department for further analysis. Around Teleçana, we have managed to retrieve a 13-meter undisturbed radiocarbon dated sedimentary sequence. In the core, the high-resolution ITRAX core scanner data shows that the Pleistocene to Holocene transition at the bottom and marked on the screen presents calcium titanium anomalies due change from drier, cold weather to wetter and warmer environment. A striking contrasting pattern can be seen during the end of late Bronze Age at the 3.K BP event. This may suggest that the collapse of the Hittite Empire and the population dynamics of early Iron Age may well be strongly, but not solely associated with environmental changes that occur over a wide area in a longer time period. This presentation was the result of the many years of fieldworks and owes much respect to all of the team members of excavation, survey, and geoarchaeological fieldwork. So I thank I thank all of them and thank you for your attendance and patience.